got a call from a friend who I'd worked with in my early Turner days, Evan, and who had actually been one of my consulting clients. He'd gone to Univision, and he convinced me to come and have a meeting. I went to meet the folks at Univision. I joke all good Iranians should work in Spanish language TV. And I really liked the people that I met. Obviously, media was my jam. I connected with them, I respected them, and that was enough to convince me to go back in. And I'd been doing consulting. They weren't interested in a consulting project. And we agreed that I'd sign a one-year contract. So I want to show you a picture of the man who, at that point, owned Univision. He's the one in the middle, Jerry Perenchio. Jerry Perenchio is a very well-known, well, not well-known. He was one of the largest anonymous philanthropic donors in the country. He was a self-made man who actually lived in the Beverly Hillbillies mansion. Jerry shunned the press. He actually invented pay-per-view. He did the Bobby Riggs-Billie Jean match. He was Norman Lear's partner, and he also was Elizabeth Taylor and Marlon Brando's agent. He was known to have the Midas touch, and before anybody was focused on the Hispanic market, he saw the opportunity and owned Univision. Why am I showing you this picture of Jerry? I'm going to come back to. Because he ended up being seminal in my career. Now, I took the job, and I had 2 weeks before I was starting. And in that window, one day I get a phone call from my soon-to-be boss. He says, Jerry Perenchio's here, and we'd like you to come and meet him in the next hour. I don't have a ton of time to prep. I really hadn't done a lot of homework on who Jerry Perenchio is. And I think he was in his 70s at that time. I show up, go into a conference room, and Jerry's sitting there. You know, people get very funny around billionaires. He's sitting there with my resume. And he says, you've moved a lot. We like people who come and stay and become family. And as you saw from my resume, particularly in those days, I had moved a lot. That wasn't really all that normal. And I sort of looked at him and I said, here's the deal. I sort of feel like in life, you only get to live once. While I can have impact and I can learn, I'll stay. And when I can't, I'll have to leave. And by the way, I'm a little bit confused as to why we're having this conversation because we've only signed a one-year contract. I think Jerry was a little taken aback. I don't think billionaires are used to that much honesty in one small dose. So he sort of laughed and hugged me on my way out the door. And it turned out that I stayed at that job for 7 years. So you just never know how it's going to work out. So the reason I'm telling this story about Jerry is because, in fact, even though I didn't directly work for Jerry, and Jerry's not the one who hired me, he's the one who actually promoted me for the first time to the C-suite as a CMO. Basically, a project comes along. Right before that, maybe in my second year, I had been hired as an SVP of marketing. I get wind that the company, the boss, not Jerry, but Ray, was looking for a CMO for Univision. And I thought to myself, why not me? So I went to go see Ray a couple times to make my case, and he sort of like brushed me off. Then a project shows up. The sales guys convinced Jerry that we should do advertising, and I'm the likely prospect to actually do the job. I work on the project directly for Jerry, and a couple months later he comes. We actually meet in that exact same conference room, and he says to me, you know we've been looking for a CMO, right? Why not you? And I was about to answer, and he said, shh, don't speak when the job is done. And that was Jerry's way of saying, you have the job. So the thing that was amazing about that journey and getting to that point is that I'd found a job where I could have impact. I worked with people who I respected. I cared deeply about Univision and what we were trying to accomplish. And I finally found somebody who saw me. And I think it's because Jerry was a talent agent, right? And he sort of was a self-made guy, and he didn't sort of have all the blinders that a lot of people had. And that job became seminal in my career. So I think it really matters to actually figure out what meaning for you is, and then to look for that. And part of that equation oftentimes is also the people that you get to work for and with.